Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. We've seen a lot of big surprises in the college football landscape, even over the last couple of weeks. I mean, we got Bill Belichick taking over the North Carolina program. Dabo Swinney and Clemson getting active in the transfer portal certainly can be filed away under one of those bigger surprises. And you look at Tristan Smith, 6'5", 205, wide receiver from the FCS ranks. This is a really intriguing cat that we're going to see on this Clemson roster in 2025. There's a couple of stories I want to get into. Number one, let's talk about Tristan Smith. Let's talk about what he can bring to this Clemson wide receiver room in the 2025 year, but also have a conversation of what does this mean for Clemson in terms of, are they going to be a program that starts to use the transfer portal? And look, we know that Dabo Swinney is not going to be Lane Kiffin. He wants to recruit these kids out of high school. He wants to develop them up through the ranks. But the transfer portal has emerged as a weapon, a roster building weapon that if you want to be competitive at the top of this college football landscape, you kind of have to utilize to a certain extent. Is this me getting up here and saying Dabo Swinney needs to add 30 transfers a year? No, but the opportunity to enhance your roster just a little bit in an offseason immediately is something that it's hard to not do when every other program that you're competing against is doing that to a significant extent. And so this might mark a little bit of a change in terms of how Dabo Swinney operates and views the college football landscape, which I think is really big news for Clemson fans. I mean, if you had one concern about where this Clemson program was going under Dabo Swinney, just felt like he wasn't adapting to the new times. We talk about this all the time. It's sports, it's business, it's life. The world changes. The landscape changes. And if you don't change with it, you go out of business or you don't have the success that you've had in the past. I look at Dabo Swinney and say it might have took him longer than some of these other programs and coaches, and he's probably not going to use the transfer portal to the same extent that some other coaches do. But if he starts to use the transfer portal a little bit more, I do think this will significantly help Clemson over the next couple of years. We'll see if it plays out that way. Want to talk about Tristan Smith, have a little bit more of a conversation around Clemson using the portal. Now, before we get into it, as always, to the Clemson fans, I mean, one, we still got a job to do in the 2024 season, but it's never too early to start looking at 2025. The amount of support y'all have shown the boys throughout the 2024 year, talking the recruiting trail, can't say thank you guys enough. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Hopefully we got a couple more transfer portal commitments to break down for Clemson. Now, let's start with Tristan Smith. And I'll be the first one to raise my hand and say I don't spend my Saturdays watching Southeast Missouri State football, but I did kind of do some background reading of this kid. He's a JUCO guy that went to Southeast Missouri State. The thing that stands out to me the most, 6'5", 205, I mean, that frame is going to be very difficult for opposing defensive backs to deal with. And I think secondly, I mean, he had 131 targets in the 2024 year. What does that tell us right off the bat? They wanted to get this kid the football at Southeast Missouri State. And he's a smooth mover from what I've seen. I mean, it's hard to find these 6'5" body type wide receivers that can create some separation and have the body control that Tristan Smith does. It makes sense why Dabo Swinney went after this kid. And he gives you continuing to stockpile some explosive wide receivers. And what's the biggest difference between K Klubnik in this Clemson offense in 2023 versus what we saw in 2024? To me, it's the vertical passing attack. I mean, you look at what Brian Wesco or a guy like TJ Moore has provided to Clemson, even as true freshmen, that ability to hit some of those explosive plays was just not present for Clemson in 2023, and it is in 2024. And as a result, you've seen a significantly better Clemson offense in 2024. Tristan Smith probably going to allow you to do that even more at 6'5". There's just not a lot of defensive backs that can work down the field with a guy like Tristan Smith who is 6'5". Brian Wesco, TJ Moore, potentially Antonio Williams coming back. Now you add Tristan Smith. You look at guys like Cole Turner and Adam Randall. They might be trying to find some other opportunities at other programs after this year. This is a Clemson wide receiver that you kind of just fast forward and take a little sneak peek under the hood. Say, well, what are we going to look like in 2025? it looks pretty good. And it looks pretty good, especially when you had a guy like Tristan Smith. Now, I think the question is this the last time we see Clemson make an addition? I don't think so because they hosted Will Heldt from Purdue, a guy that I'm a massive, massive fan of. He's not going to be a guy that lights up the stat sheet. He's probably not going to have the sack numbers that somebody like TJ Parker does. Will Heldt is a hammer against the run. I mean, 26 run stops in 2024 in the Big Ten. There were not a lot of good players on Purdue. Will Heldt was one of them. And a lot of times when we talk about pass rushers or edge rushers, you might say, we look at what they can do rushing the passer, which is priority number one when you're looking for edge guys. Will Heldt can give you some juice as a pass rusher. He's still a young guy that's only going into year 3, but what he does from a physicality standpoint, stopping the run, I think could be a massive addition for Clemson. You talk about playing some complementary football, stop the run on first and second down. TJ Parker pinning his ears back on the other side, getting after the pass. That is what you're looking for if you're Clemson on defense. And so now, what does this mean for Clemson? I think it's the bigger storyline. Look, Tristan Smith's an exciting wide receiver that we're going to get to see for Clemson in 2025. What does this mean for the program? I think it might be a little bit, and we talked about this as we rounded out Clemson's 2025 recruiting class. Normally, Clemson loads it up in the high school ranks. It was a smaller class for Clemson in 2025, and we said if you're going to bring in a small class like that, you probably have to supplement it in the transfer portal, and it looks like that's exactly what Dabo Swinney and Clemson are going to do. And again, does it say we need to take 20? I don't even think that's the recipe. I mean, you still look at the best programs, the premier programs across the country, the bulk of their roster are getting recruited out of the high school ranks and getting developed into the program. And the transfer portal is used to kind of fill in the cracks that you see in your roster from a year-to-year basis. You're not going to hit on every kid that you recruit out of high school. And so 1 year might be, hey, we need another difference maker or wide receiver. 1 year might be, hey, we need a plug and play center. 1 year might be, we need some more depth at the cornerback spot because we didn't hit on a few targets that we thought were going to be dudes for us. That's how the transfer portal's got to be used. And again, so does Dabo Swinney have to go out and get 20 plus guys? I don't think so. I don't think Dabo Swinney will be that guy. Even if it's just 5 to 10, a smaller transfer portal class, filling in some of those cracks in the roster, having the opportunity to fill in some of those cracks in your roster immediately in one offseason, it is such a big weapon for these programs across the country. And for Dabo Swinney to show that he's maybe getting on the train to doing that, I think matters because it's hard to see Clemson consistently competing for national championships when they're not doing it and every other program that you're competing against does. 4 years ago, the transfer portal was not really that big of a weapon, so it never really hurt Dabo Swinney and Clemson that much. And you saw teams maybe add 1 or 2 guys, but it wasn't putting teams over the top in terms of national championships. Now it is. Yeah, I went back to you talk about Clemson in 2023. What if Florida State didn't get Keon Coleman? What if Clemson did? You're probably looking at another ACC championship. And so I think Dabo Swinney is slowly realizing that. I think he might be buying into it a little bit, which we don't need him to buy into the transfer portal all the way. I don't even know if I want him to do that. But just using it a little bit to supplement this roster, I think means this is big for Clemson. Yes, Tristan Smith committing is exciting. The idea that Dabo Swinney is starting to supplement this roster in the portal, I think it's a bigger storyline. We'll cut it out there. Again, appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later.